You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hello everyone, this is episode 33 and I am joined by the wonderful Kate Freeman, who I've had loads of conversations with, and I love her personality and I'm sure you will too. So welcome, Kate.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to chat to you today.
Yay. Well, why don't you tell everyone, like, obviously your title and what it is that you do at the moment?
Yep. So I am a growth strategist or consultant. Not entirely sure. I like the word consultant. It makes me a bit. But I help product-based businesses to scale and grow to become profit powerhouses. I'm particularly passionate about working with female product business owners and helping them to really create a sustainable business that they can grow and run and be really proud of and gain a really good income from. So yes, that's
Amazing. And that's really, like, obviously my vibe as a whole is obviously, you know, the female empowerment piece, but also the fact that I think most people that I've had on my podcast haven't had a smooth ride to get to where they are now, because obviously if they had, it wouldn't be fit for the show. So
yes.
if you'd like to just kind of give us an overview, like the floor is yours, whatever you want to share, but kind of tell us about your journey to kind of how you got to where you are now. You can be as open and vulnerable as possible, because obviously that's what we love. And then obviously anytime I find something that I'm like, aha, that connects to that, I will jump in and tell you. So the floor is yours.
Oh, fab. So I think the best place to start is right at the beginning. So age 15, I was at school and made to do work experience. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know what I'm going to go and do for the week. I haven't got a clue. I was never one of those people that's like, I'm going to be a doctor. I hate blood. I faint at the sight of blood. So that wasn't for me. And I just was like, what am I going to do? So I went to the careers guy and was like, look, we've got to do this week's work experience. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he suggested I go and work with this company that produced, at the time, beauty products for boots. So all of the kind of, I think it was called like Fresh or something. So I was like, sounds cool. So off I went for a week to do work experience with them. And I really enjoyed it and left with this like box of goodies that I just thought was amazing, with bath bombs and shower gels and all those types of nail varnishes and things. And that was all fine. I take that off for school. And then went to university and read geography and was kind of part way through year one and was like enjoying this. It was human geography, not standing in a stream with like one of those things measuring water flow or anything. It was a different kind of geography. But I was like, I'm not sure that I want to teach geography. Like, what am I going to do with this degree? So I thought, kind of enjoyed that work experience when I was 15. I'm going to write to them and see if I can come and do like another week's work experience, because what I enjoyed at 15 might not quite be the same here. And did I just like it because I got a load of freebies at the end of the week? So long story short, I really enjoyed it. They offered me a job in every university holiday. So I went back and worked with them. And then before I graduated, they offered me a job on like completion of my degree. And I was like, oh, amazing. I was like, oh my God, you don't want me to get a first, do you? And they were like, no, you can fail and we still want to employ you. So I was like, oh, amazing. So I left university and went to work for them. And basically, they then at that point lost the Boots contract, but were working with Marks and Spencer's. And we were producing all the products for Champneys that were then sold into Sainsburys. So I went straight in and was creating products for Champneys Champneys that were then sold into Sainsburys. And over my kind of 3-4 years with them, I was basically taking product concept all the way through to product on shelf. And I did it for Elemis, Champneys, so 2 big spa brands. I also did own care skin labels for Sainsburys, John Lewis, Waitrose. I did a little bit on Body Shop. So I got a really kind of broad spectrum of kind of brand experience, and taking things from, as I say, like that initial like idea on a piece of paper all the way through to the final finished thing, which is just the most exciting bit. I love that bit. And that was everything from kind of pinpointing gaps within the market and how you go about doing it, pricing it, sourcing all the bits that go into it, costing it, so you know that you're going to make the right amount of money, all the packaging, the wording, the product on the back of, you know, all the copy on the back of pack, all of that. So yes, I did that. And then I started to get a little bit bored and was like, oh, I'm ready for something else. And my boyfriend at the time, who turned out to be Mr. Not Quite Right, who was super career driven, got offered a job in Italy. And I was like, whoa, I'm going to move, and I'm going to move to Italy with him. So I did. Packed up everything, quit my job, packed up my flat, moved to Rome to be with him. I was there for like 9 months. First few months was great, and I was like, this is fun, and it was really exciting, and I got to pick a flat, and then I got to furnish the flat, and friends came out to visit, and it was all amazing. And then they all left, and I was like, now what do I do? And I think because I'd been bored in my job before, or like I'd stopped kind of enjoying it as much, I'd kind of got to a point where I was like, I need to be learning. I was hungry to learn more. I think I got confused, maybe. And I don't know if anyone else has kind of experienced this, where I was like, maybe actually, like, I want to be a stay-at-home, like, housewife, mum, whatever. You know, I wasn't a mum at the time then, but. And so I thought this Italy trip was like this get out, and I could become this sort of glamorous stay-at-home person that, you know, cooked all the meals and the house was lovely, and I went out for coffee and da 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 da. And then I got that, and the reality was, I was like, oh, I'm not sure that, like, this is really what I want. But there wasn't room within that relationship for me to kind of do my own thing. So long story short, I ended up moving back to the UK, and I needed to find a job, and it was 2012, and so the job market wasn't a booming, and I randomly met a recruiter that specialized within the beauty industry, and within 2 weeks of working with him, I had like 2 job offers. And I remember sitting down at the kitchen table, because I just moved back in with my parents, just like dull as dishwater and terrible, aged like mid, what was I, like 24, 25? And I was like, I can't believe I've ended up back at home. Like, what's happened to me? And I remember sitting there and talking to my dad, and I went, I'm just destined for something else. And he was like, are you kidding me? And my dad was in the military, so forces background, so very kind of like, this is what you do, this is your career, da, 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 da. And I was just like, this just isn't me. It was basically a job that would have meant I was kind of going back into what I was doing before I moved to Rome, just with a different company. So I phoned the recruiter guy. I was like, he's going to kill me, because obviously they get paid, don't they, when you get placed somewhere. And I was like, look, it's going to sound a bit out there, but I just think I'm destined for something else. I just had this gut feeling within my stomach. And he was like, okay, I've got something. It's a total wild card. It's Marmite. You're either going to love it or hate it. So I was like, oh, okay. I'll give it a go. What have I got to lose? Like, I still kept this job offer kind of warm, but I was like, I'm just going to explore it. I'm going to see what is there. And so I was given this phone number of someone to call, and I called this person, and she was power walking down the street in London, barking instructions at me, and I was frantically making notes, and I had to come and present to her at her house a week later on a big presentation for a client that she was working with at the time. So off I went and like did my little presentation, and I turned up at her house, like properly suited and booted. And she's like super casual in like jeans and a nice jumper. And I was like, oh, okay, I've definitely overdressed for this. Anyway, I did my little presentation and it got to like near the end and she basically stopped me. I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. And she then opened her laptop and our presentations were basically like identical. And so I don't know what happened to me, because when I came back from Rome, I was a bit of a shell of my former self. I'd felt a bit kind of battered and bruised by the whole experience. Like I'd given up everything for this person that I thought was the one that turned out not to be. I'd kind of lost my identity and who I was, it felt, which is quite a strange thing to go through, I think, quite early in your 20s, and quite a unique thing to do. I think quite a lot of people maybe experience it without stereotyping probably a bit later, like in their early 40s maybe. And I felt like, wow, why is this hitting me now? Anyway, sorry, I totally digressed then. But yeah, I sort of lost who I was. But suddenly, out of nowhere, this kind of inner strength came. And I just remember sitting there and going to her, well, look, I've been offered a job by someone else. So you've got 24 hours to decide if you want to employ me or not. I was like, where does that come from? That's not normally me. And she went, yeah, I'm going to hire you. I want to work with you. She was like, why don't you drive home for 40 minutes and figure out if this is like what you actually want, like to work for me, because this is going to be bananas. It's not your average role. She was a leading female, or she is a leading female entrepreneur in the UK. She created a company and sold it, still owning 99% of it. So at the time of sale, I made a lot of money. And she was then looking to kind of create other brands and make investments. So I was like, well, this is going to be wild. Like, I don't know. And I just drove home. I was like, this is it. This was the thing that I knew that was like coming my way. But it was like a really deep kind of intuition about it. So obviously I took the job and I spent the next 10 years with her. We created 2 brands. We invested in multiple different businesses, helping them to kind of scale and grow and either reach an exit or to continue that growth. And I'm still involved with a couple of the businesses within the kind of family office, I guess, portfolio that we had created. So yeah, that was kind of my journey. It was very, I guess, pinned on a gut intuition at parts. Taking a risk, I guess, in some respects, like I'm just reaching out to people and contacts. And I've definitely found that that's been something that has stood me in good stead since I started my own kind of business, that actually the power of connection with people can generate some like truly magical things that you don't expect, and that actually you've got inner strength within you even when you're at your lowest point.
Yes, for sure. There's so much that you've mentioned that I want to ask questions about. First of all, why geography? what like?
Do you know what? It's terrible, because I found it really easy at school. I just found it really
there
easy.
There you go, Kate. Don't take the easy option. It doesn't work.
No. I got like 99% in a paper and then 100%. My husband takes the mick out of me for this, and 100% in another paper. So I was like, why wouldn't I do it? Like, I find it easier. I kind of enjoy it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And actually, when I reflect back, it probably gave me a good broad skill set, if that makes sense. Like, I'm able to kind of analyze data. I can look at things from a kind of bigger picture perspective. And it enabled me to kind of learn to do that.
Okay, well, that's good, because obviously, I mean, there's something to learn in everything, isn't there? Yes, but I just thought, knowing you, like, obviously as loosely as I do, I thought, what, geography? I just wouldn't put that as your thing, you know. But then again, how long ago was that? We're all different people, aren't we, to what we were in our teens? So no, it's a really lovely story. And I think for me, what calls out is, obviously, I know you're a Leo. So it's like that inner strength, that inner fire is always there. And I think for me, like, a few times you said things about, being around friends, the traveling aspect, but like, that networking community type of thing. I guess like you going out for coffee, doing nice luxurious things, that is kind of like that leisurely side of Leo. But equally, the connection with your friends, being with family, that's all really important. And then you coming back and sensing that something wasn't right and you knew you wanted more. that again is just so strongly in there, because I think naturally, obviously leadership, but also creativity is like something that's very Leo energy, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, and especially the presentation you delivered, you gave exactly what you wanted, and it came into almost fruition, right? And I think that's almost like a way of you manifesting it without you even realizing, is that you were, you know, you were clear on what you didn't want. So it allowed you to then think about what you do want. And I think a lot of people get a bit hung up on that with the art of manifesting. I think people are like, oh, you know, I can't see exactly what I want, but I know it's not this, and we get all confused. But actually, just as clearly as that, being like, right, I don't want to do that again. What would my best thing look like? Is this? Just trust it will come in. And actually, you know, it took a lot of work, I would say, in terms of like you putting the presentation together, short notice, you're just rushing around. You know, there's lots of things that require action within that, but you just following that call that you had inside of you to be like, no, this is what I want, ultimately opened up obviously all of the doors that you followed through now. And I don't think you'd probably walk into a job in your like mid-20s that's your dream job like that so easy if you don't trust yourself. Like, I think that those opportunities aren't presented to you, are they? You think about the recruiter had, you know, just these other bits and bobs that were there, but because you were like, no, don't want that, I want this, that clarity led you to where you're supposed to be, which is amazing. And we could all do with a bit of that, because we get lost, don't we? I think as you were saying, you know, that feeling of emptiness comes from not listening to yourself. And I think the moment that we can listen to what we truly want, I think that again is that reclaiming of power, but also that's just what you're here to do. You know, I think we're not supposed to always follow this ingrained thing of, like you were saying, you know, your dad was like regimented in exactly what was expected of you, that kind of thing. It's like, that's like a really old narrative, isn't it, to follow? Now you think about it, like, we can have and be whatever we want to be as long as you believe that, because it's all in good someone else telling you it, but until you believe it, I think that's where we all get lost, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think about that a lot. Like, I've got 2 little girls now. Like, I don't know, they don't want to go to university, that's not going to be something that I'm going to push upon them. But I think growing up, that was just expected. It was the kind of norm within the environment that I was in, that like that was what was going to happen. And I think sometimes you've got to just take a step back if those kind of norms are being presented on you, to go, I don't know, is that right for me, like truly as a person? But I think you can only do that when you really take time to sit with that. And I guess my situation with Italy and Mr. Not Quite Right, like, forced that upon me in kind of quite a drastic way. And yes, I might have got to where I am now, but maybe not in the time frame that I have, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I also think as well, with the journey with the Mr. Not Quite Right, that even like moving to a different country is obviously life-changing. You know, you've got to be adaptable, you're open-minded, you know, all of those things there. 2, obviously the idea that you're kind of stuck with that person. You know, you don't have everyone else that you used to have, like your friends and family at arm's length to go and vent to. It's like you're trapped kind of almost with this person. So it's like when you choose that decision, you've got to be really 100% all in. And then 3, obviously, I guess, you know, that lack of freedom, isn't it, almost, as in like you can, like you mentioned in there that you didn't have the freedom in the relationship that you wanted necessarily, but I guess the masculine role obviously is to be the provider, so maybe in a way he was trying to protect you, and then it kind of blocked you. It's like a weird thing. And I think, you know, in our early like 20s, we're still navigating who we are as people, so that's quite hard. And I think a lot of people I speak to about their relationships at that time frame, if they're still with the partner now, like they've stayed together, the relationship has had so many twists and turns within it, because we're evolving constantly, aren't we? But I do think, listening to your story, that was almost like what you needed in order for you to become the version of yourself you are now. So I always talk about like the universe will put you in situations for you to make a choice, and it's not always comfortable. You know, I think a lot of the time we think a spiritual awakening is almost like this mystical ride of unicorns and fairies, but actually it's not. It's these hard moments, isn't it, where you're like, okay, are you going to follow someone else's pattern of what they want for you and please them, or are you going to drop it all and choose yourself? And I think, you know, I hope that you feel proud of yourself for choosing yourself in that moment, because obviously ultimately it's led to everything you are now. And I guess on that, would you say that that was a moment in your life where you really did give yourself that permission to shine?
Yes. When I look back, I would say that moment, I think it was that moment actually sat at the kitchen table where I went, look, you've got 24 hours to decide if you're going to employ me or not. That was a turning moment for me, a moment where I just suddenly was almost like, if I panned out and looked down on myself, was like, wow, yes, you can do this. You have got this. You've come from kind of rock bottom. I remember getting off the plane when I come back from Italy. I couldn't get hold of my parents. They were on holiday and they were ironically flying back into Heathrow. And I was landing back into Heathrow like 2 hours later, but I couldn't get hold of them to say, can you wait for me? Then when they got there, I phoned my best friend and was like, it's ended, it's over. I'm packing my stuff. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow morning. She was like, I'm coming to Heathrow. I'll pick you up. And I was like, I can't get hold of my parents. They're flying back from abroad. They're on the plane now. She's like, don't worry, I'll call them. So bless her, she was like calling them. She's like, I'm about to get in the car. Kate's coming back. Like, she's landing in Heathrow in 2 hours. And my parents were like, what? She was like, don't worry, I'll explain when I get there. And actually she didn't. My parents were like, we'll just stay here. We're in Terminal 3. We'll go round to Terminal 5 and wait for her. And I felt terrible. They'd just been on this trip of a lifetime and arrived back in Heathrow. And there's me in this sort of crumbled mess at the time. But I mean, it probably came back maybe 6-7 weeks for me to kind of feel more like aligned, and I gained that kind of attunement. And then within 8 weeks I had that job.
That's amazing. But I also think as well, what I've learned, I think for you in the same situation of like moving away, that's almost like you taking like that, you're no longer their little girl anymore, you're a woman. And I think what happens is there's a shift with parents too, where they become your almost caregiver to your friend, so to speak. So I think that moment of you needing them would give them so much satisfaction, because I think we think as like the child that we're burdening them, but actually that's that's what they were there for, you know. So I don't think, you know, and if any parent does think that their child is a burden at what age, depending obviously on the situation, generally that's a sign that work needs to be done. But I think for your parents, I think that they would be thinking, oh, my beautiful daughter, I've got to look after her now. And I don't think they felt any resentment to that. And I think it was probably great for them to nurture and care for you in that time. And what an incredible best friend, you know, like to be there, you know. And I've got a handful of really good friends that would do the same for me. And I had a similar situation where I'd worked abroad, so slightly different in terms of it wasn't related to relationships, but my very first dance jobs in the industry, 2 of them back to back were just awful. And similar to you, I know what's wrong or right for me. Even at that age where I was young, unhealed, you know, living in trauma, I still, and actually probably that was a trauma response in itself, that I just wouldn't settle. Like, you know, straight away I could suss out, and I still do now to an extent, like I can, it's called hypervigilance, but basically I assess a situation. So without realising it, I go into an automatic response, and nowhere near as bad as it was then. But back then I would be almost like a spy, like, you know, like looking out, sussing out where the exit routes, who's doing this, blah, blah, blah. So I could map out a whole room just even before I walk in. And just the jobs were so awful that I was getting out there and just like the pay was bad, or like the people were dodgy, like, you know, obviously a whole cast of young dancers. You can imagine what a male boss would be like in that situation. And worst case scenarios were happening out there as well. And I was like, nah, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. But I was straight on the plane home. And I remember those feelings of feeling so depleted, because I was like, this is my dream, and I've been like mugged off, so to speak. And then the next job I went on, again, trying to fix that cycle, thinking if I do it again, it'll be different. The second time it was so much worse, because I actually, thinking about it, maybe it was the first time, and I remember meeting a lady that was English. Everyone else was Dutch on this resort that I was working in. No one else to speak to. And I remember meeting her in that hotel being like nothing, you know, feeling so small, like this is not right for me. And then the day I chose to leave, she worked for the airline, and I saw her at the airport, and I just sobbed to her, because I was like, oh my God, this isn't what I wanted, and I'm so upset, rah, rah, rah. So I know that feeling of getting back on a plane and feeling like, what have I done with my life, and what am I going to do now? Because that actually, those very much, that same moment that happened in your life, it's the same for me. It's like, I'm not giving up on my dance career, but equally, this isn't what I want anymore. So what do I do next? So it's funny, actually. I think there's so much power in just traveling in general. Like I always say to people, you almost have to do those journeys of, like, you know, whether you travel solo or you go with, you know, a friend or whatever, but seeing different parts of the world and exploring one is obviously great for you to advance as a human. But those moments, it's those life moments, isn't it, where you know, you've tried to live with someone else and all those things and those experiences, but equally the taking that autonomy and your power back in that moment to say, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going home, you know. That's so much power. And I think you know, that's a great one to tell your children as well, you know, about the fact that, you know, mummy did this because it wasn't right. And I think we're all, obviously I'm not a parent myself, but I co-parented my niece, and obviously I work with kids all the time. So I just think that those moments that we're embarrassed of sharing sometimes with our kids are the real important ones that they'll remember forever, to be like, yeah, mummy just doesn't accept less than what she deserves, so she goes. Just, you know what I mean? And it's that.
Yeah, and so they have that belief that they can do that, and they've got it within them, and that it's also okay to do that. Sometimes it's, you just have to go, do you know what, this really isn't right. I'm trying to fit, was it a square peg in a round hole?
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
And I just need to take a moment to stop and go, what's right for me? And I hate letting people down. I really do. Like, I'm a people pleaser through and through. I hate it as a trait at times. Like, it really annoys me that I'm like that, because it will be to the detriment of me, and sometimes at the detriment of my family as well, because I kind of go, oh, they're okay to come on this ride with me, and I'm like, no, hang on, because I don't even want to be on this ride. Why am I dragging them on it?
Yes, Kate, you sound like my mother. Oh, there's so many times I've had to say to her, no, don't volunteer me, hun. But it does take, and I've been you as well. Like, I absolutely know that, because you know, we're so hardworking and determined, right, in everything that we do. But I think there's always a glimmer of that being like, you don't want to be too much, or you don't want to look like the person that wants to be overbearing or the center of attention. Like I just know from speaking to you that you're a vibrant character. So I know that sometimes maybe you might feel like, oh yeah, I don't want to make them feel intimidated, so I'll just be smaller. You know, I know that. I know exactly what you're saying. And I think people pleasing gave me validation as well, because if I could be of service to others, I felt like I was a good human.
Yep, totally. Yeah, and I'm 6 foot as well. So not only do I feel like I've got at times quite a big personality, which comes, I know, with the Leo trait, but then also throw being 6 foot into the mix.
I love that.
When you walk into the room, it feels like a lot. Like, and I've had that from quite an early age, always being the taller. But in a co-ed class, you know, I was taller than all the boys growing up, because obviously they take a lot longer, don't they, to suddenly shoot up in height. So yeah, I always feel a bit like I need to kind of shrink into myself. It's only been recently that I'm like, no, actually, like, I need to own this.
Yes, you're an elegant gazelle and you own that energy.
But also I think it was really sitting earlier this year with that feeling again. Funnily enough, it was not quite a year, 10 years, it was 11. I'm like, I don't know if this happens on like a kind of decade basis for me, but I had that second kind of turning point for me where I was like, right, something's misaligned here, and I've gone off track on where I needed to be. I had the most incredible 10 years working with that entrepreneur and learned so much. And I mean, honestly, there was tears and all sorts when I left, but I knew that it was it was the right decision. I then kind of weaved a little off track, and I've now come back to a place that I know feels really right for me. And I know that because I get so much excitement and joy through helping other people grow their businesses, but doing it in a way that's aligned to me, that kind of, it all feels like it's aligning again. But it's funny, isn't it? You kind of, I don't know if other people experience that these things kind of happen on a cycle. I was reading about it, but it tends to happen at milestone points of like 30, 40. I seem to be doing it in like my mid-20s and my mid-30s rather than...
How old were you the second time?
35.
Right, so you would have just come out of a Saturn return. So the Saturn return kind of happens between like 27-ish to 33, 32, 33. So it could have been like the seeds were getting sown at that time, and you didn't quite leave until that time was ready. But also there's something in numerology as well with that. So depending on your basically we all have like destiny numbers, soul numbers, like all of these different numbers. So we basically add up all of the date of your birth. So for example, mine's like 22nd, so 22 plus 8 plus 199 a 1, and I'd add that up, and then that's my, and then I'd add, so all of those numbers together give me one number. So you keep adding until you get one number or two. If it's 11 or 22, no other number can count for that. And each number represents something different. So within our, it's almost like you think about the tectonic plates, bring it back to geography.
Like that.
So, you know, like the plates shift. So I almost feel like there's timelines where we shift it into different spaces. So it could just be that. And, or, I mean, I'm going well spiritual now, but there's also the, you know, the women connection of being like the maiden into like the I don't know what the next one is, but like to the crone, you know, like there's the different stage of our lives. So, you know, like almost when we hit menopause, there's another energetic shift that happens just internally as well. So I think when you're in tune with like who you are, I think, and your emotions, that just in itself is just wonderful anyway. And I think who stays anywhere for longer than 10 years, really? Do you know what I mean? If you want real change in your life and growth, I mean, I'm not throwing shade on anyone that stayed anywhere for longer than that. I'm not throwing shade on that. But ultimately, you can't stay doing the same thing you've always done, because you won't get a different result, right? So I think, just, you know, who you are as a person, you know, from what I know, is that you are dedicated to growth and expansion. And I think exploration as well, like of your soul, I think comes out in that, you know, like how you like to connect with others, and that nurture and fulfillment, I think, with you working with business owners really is like a soul aligned thing for you, 100%. Because I just think that, you know, that people pleasing energy can be transmuted in a way that works for you, right? Instead of it being against you. No, I really like you, Kate. I think you've just got great energy about you. I just see all these things for you, and I'm like, yes, all of it. And it's great, because I think that you're going to be able to transform so many people's businesses, because already you know so much. I think on one of the calls we were on before, and you was telling us about the research and how you look to this, and we were all like, wow, that's just that mind-blowing. So, you know, you know, not only are you fit for the role as a human and who you are as a person, but equally your knowledge in this field is just outstanding. So you're definitely in the right place for sure. But I would say, like, kind of in this transition, obviously us becoming our, you know, aligned self where we're supposed to be, what would you say, like, the obstacles that you'd faced in your life, the continuous ones? You know, there's always like a little niggle of something that pops up every now and again. What would you say those moments have been for you?
I guess I get this like gut feeling, and I'm like, I've got to go with it. I just have this weird, like, I need to go with it. I just know. And it's funny because it won't happen with like mundane stuff. Like, so I'll be getting ready to go out, and my husband will be like, can you please hurry up? I'm like, these shoes or these shoes? Like, can't make that decision. Whoa, no, that like just too. But throw me something really big and punchy, and I'm able to do it like really quite easily, and have faith in that decision. But I always get the like mind monkeys. So like I'll make that decision, and then if progress with it, if I don't get kind of fairly regular kind of, I guess, acknowledgement that it's the right decision, or like some return sign from the universe, which might sound a bit out there, but I do kind of believe in that. Then the mind monkeys will come in for me, and I'll go, oh, maybe that wasn't right and your gut was wrong. And I'm like, no, often, do you know what I mean? Sometimes I think it's your mind can
sabotage.
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. That gut feeling within you, so people don't listen to it.
Absolutely.
But yes, for me, and maybe therefore the thing holding me back is the requirement for external validation, and that I need to learn that I don't need external validation to move forward. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That my gut is strong, and it's got me to this point. Like, when I think of all the pivotal moments that have changed the trajectory of my direction, and in a really positive way, it's because I've listened to my gut. So why don't I maintain that belief in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And I love that you shared that, because there's so many, especially women. I think women more so, because intuition is a natural thing inside of us.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say more so, because obviously I don't like to do the gender thing, but it could be more of a feminine energy trait as well, because obviously there's lots of men that can do that, but I feel like it's something they have to learn, men, whereas something women we have, but because we live in a patriarchal society, that I feel like that kind of side of us is almost silenced. You know, the gaslighting thing happens, right? And obviously for generations, women have been gaslit for their thoughts, their feelings, you know, even the topic of periods, no one wants to talk about, you know, or didn't want to talk about because of that thing. And that real true, you just hit the nail on the head when you said about my gut is always right, so why do I question it? And it's just that is just the power in everything, you know, like and I've learned recently as well that the thoughts that come into your head, well, I say recently, I've always known this, but it was scientifically backed up through research now, that the thoughts in your head aren't yours. So I've always known that, because just through obviously the trauma in my life, that, you know, when things have been really hard and difficult and I've been in really dark spaces, is that I don't think like that. That's not my way of thinking. So these dark like thoughts, these saboteurs, I know they're not mine. So when you can stand in your power and own that, and you know that fully, that's when you're kind of like, I always say about two wolves in your mind. So like, one's obviously the good thoughts, one's the bad thoughts. So when you know you're trusting your gut, obviously the good wolf is leading. But the minute you start to listen to the monkeys, as you said, it's like you're feeding the bad wolf. So then that starts to take over, and it takes up the space. And that's with like depression, isolation, these low energy frequencies that we feel, we get consumed by the bad wolf. It's because we've fed it too much. So it's a big fat wolf in your head. It just needs to be starved. And equally on that as well, there is a great balance between the two at times. You know, like if you don't have that, almost that questioning to be like, is this the right choice? Then you would kind of almost like freely fall into things, and maybe you would, you know, it might get a bit willy-nilly. Do you know what I mean? So I think that having just a tiny little bit of like, is that the right choice though? Did you want to make that? And really sitting with that and being like, yeah, do you know what? This is a reason why I need to take this. One, it feels right, but two, X, Y, and Z. And that's almost the balance and the synchronicity between the masculine and feminine energy. So I think when we can have that, I think that's perfect. And yeah, I 100% think, and agree with everything you said there, for sure. So yeah, tell us a little bit about kind of the business now in a bit more detail, like kind of how can you help women, and then maybe like three top tips that you'd give to someone maybe starting up in product.
Yeah. Okay. So at the moment, I'm working with lots of my clients one-to-one. So that is either through doing a big business audit for them, and I will look at kind of 5 core pillars. So that will be their purpose, their people, not just the people within their team, but the people that they're serving with their products, their products themselves, their pricing, and their processes. And I work with them to kind of really optimize those to generate more profit within the business that will enable them to spend where they want to, whether that's paying themselves more money, hiring someone else within the team, or spending more on marketing to kind of grow the business in that way. I will then work with them kind of over a longer period of time as well, doing kind of check-ins with them monthly to keep them on track so that they're hitting their growth targets. And into next year, I'm super excited. I'm going to be launching 2 online academies. So one for a scaling product business. So those that have already started their product business journey, but are looking to kind of take it to the next level, whether that's because they're doing it as a side hustle alongside their job, or they're just ready for that like next level of growth within their business and they want to expand it further. And then my passion project, which is helping startup businesses. So people that have got an amazing idea and go, I don't know where to begin. So yes, those will be launching next year in 2024, and they'll all be kind of online learning and then with group check-ins and things. And then my 3 top tips for someone starting out. Okay, so if you've got an idea, my first recommendation would be, and you've got a name for your brand, would be to register that name as a trademark. So you need to go to the IPO and do all of your brand registration stuff. Because I have worked with 2 businesses now that didn't do that from the get-go, and then found that either they told someone within their network who then went off and did that registration or took that domain so that they couldn't own it, which is obviously really sad when you've had this amazing idea, right? And you feel super inspired and excited to get going. And then you go on that, you know, your domain host, purchasing provider, don't want to name any in case we get told off, whoever you choose to use, and find that it's gone. And then you go through the whole IP thing and turns out somebody that you know, or someone that you know, there's some tangential link and it's all gone that way. So my first thing would be to try and register your trademarks. And then the second piece of advice would be to really focus on like who your target customer is. Who have you designed this product or, service for? And speak to them, and always speak to them, because you will not go wrong if you stick to that. As soon as you try to like reach everyone, you will reach no one. So that would be my top piece of advice, but also to know that as your business scales, that who, as I like to call it, will change probably as the business evolves. And then my third one would be to price your products correctly. You need to have the right margin. Because if you want to sell to wholesale at some point in the future, you need to be able to factor all those margin requirements in. So you've got to make some money. The retailer's got to make some money. And so that all needs to kind of filter through. And so it's easier to have a higher price and reduce it than it is to sting your customers with sudden, huge and continuous incremental price increases because you didn't start at the right place from the get-go. So I think those would be my top 3.
Yeah, no, that was really helpful as well. I think even for me, I was thinking, that was a great idea. But no, it really is that. And I've heard that a few times, obviously, with, starting my business, is like, if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And I think it's such a spot on thing, isn't it? Because I feel like, just as a consumer as well, like when I listen to something and I feel like that person or that product is speaking to me, like I need that, I'm like, wow, okay, there we go, hand my money over without even thinking about it. And you think how many times we do that? We're influenced, we've been influenced by something, and that really is it, isn't it? That's what influencers are doing technically. They're just selling their product, service, or whatever it is. So yeah, super, super helpful. So if anyone is in a startup situation, or, they've got a business, they're looking to expand, where can they come to find you?
So you can find me online under katefreeman.co.uk, or I'm on Instagram, just started out on there, at This Is Kate Freeman. And then I'm also on LinkedIn under Kate Freeman as well.
Amazing. So as like a closing tradition, I always ask my guests kind of like a little bit of a soul to soul message, I call it. So it's something that maybe you would tell your inner child, or a past version of you, or maybe someone starting up now and feels a bit lost, or what would be like your message? What do you feel like you need to say?
That you are good enough. You are always good enough. You will never not be good enough. and you shouldn't let anyone tell you otherwise. Yeah, I think that's it. That and listening to your gut.
Yes,
because that's what's led me to where I am now. So I really truly believe that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And it really is that. I think when you can really ingrain that into you, that you are worthy enough, and no matter what life throws at you or what you see in the outside world right now, if you know that you're meant for more and you trust that, it will inevitably come at the right time. Because like we were speaking about the timeline thing, right? We can't control time. All we can control is kind of being in that right energy and trusting the process. But I'm really grateful that I've had you on and that I've heard your story, and it's been really lovely to have you here. So yeah, if anyone needs to find you, I'll put all your details in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you. It's been super lovely as always chatting to you. So yeah, thank you.